So some of you may be exploring mindfulness and wondering, how is this going to help me live with more peace, purpose, and happiness? And the reason is that it helps us to settle in mind, body, and spirit. So bring a little peace into our being, calm down, recenter. And then in that stillness and that space, we learn how to observe what's going on within and around us, which leads to an understanding of what's actually happening, what is manifesting the experience that we are having, and what needs are present that I need to nurture in order to come back to my heart-centered self or my peaceful state. And then when we are living in that heart-centered self or that peaceful state, we are better able to, one, experience happiness, because that joy shows up when you are present and living as your heart-centered self. And we live with more purpose because we understand what are my truest values at my heart center. Which is why mindfulness has been proven to offer you all kinds of amazing things like decreased depression, increased self-awareness, increased enjoyment of life and happiness, better relationships, and so many more offerings of this amazing practice. And so let's look into why. How does it do this? What's the functioning behind it? And what we come back to is the ancient teaching of, well, Gandhi said it, but it was the Lao Tzu first, and then of course neuroscience is now finding the same thing, proving the same thing, which is, watch your thoughts because they become your words, which become your actions, which turn into your beliefs, which becomes your destiny. So ideally, what that's saying, and truthfully, what neuroscience is finding, what you think, so the contents of your mind, where your attention goes, creates the reality that you are living and what will happen to you in your life. So what does that mean for mindfulness? Is that not only is it, your thoughts are contributing into your experience of reality, but you also have the components of the heart, so the spirit, and the body, your physical well-being, and your mental and emotional. And all those things are working together to create your experience of reality. What you're believing in your values, in your heart space, how connected you are to that spirit within you. And then what your body is going through. What are you experiencing physically in life? What are those stimuli in your environment creating in your body? And what that interplays then with your emotional side. How are those working together? And all of that creates your reality. So building an awareness around all of those, which you do in mindfulness, gives you a better understanding of what experience you're having in life. Now we go back to the actual mind side of things. So you're thinking, well, what does the mind have to do with it, right? Think, well, I'm having this experience, this is the reality, that's how it is. Incorrect. Every experience you have goes through a process within the mind that interprets it and generates your reaction. So for example, if you're out in the woods, you're by yourself, you hear a snap. The stimulus is a snap in the woods. Now the mind has to decide, what am I going to do about this? What reaction am I going to create? So this is the thalamus that is going to communicate with the hippocampus, which holds our memories of past experience, of how we're going to relate to this experience. They talk to each other and they decide, Is this going to be a life-threatening situation, so something I need to react quickly to, which would be we send it to the limbic system? Or is this something that I can handle cognitively, that I want to stay present and aware for, which we send it to the prefrontal cortex to be processed? And we make this decision really quick, but it's based on our beliefs and experiences from before. What do we immediately, knee-jerk, think that this is? And then that determines what are we going to do. So if it sends it to the limbic system, we go into fight, flight, freeze response. We're not thinking higher process cognitively. Or it goes into, you're okay, this might be a threat, but you have time, we need to process and think through it. Goes to the prefrontal cortex, and you get to actually consciously process what you are going through. The benefit of being able to notice that process and switch over more to prefrontal cortex, you get more of a choice into what you are experiencing. If we spend too much time in the limbic response, which a lot of us do in stress states, we're just reacting to life, just seeing threats and then reacting. So what does that little map tell us about the functioning of our mind? Well, we have a stimulus that comes into our awareness. Everything has to go through our processing system, right? So stimulus comes in, and we have this process in our mind that goes through what are our values around this, our beliefs, our thoughts about this stimulus that just came in. Based on what we form, we then create the reaction. These reactions then turn into our habits. So what we are doing, who we are being, and this generates our reality. If we see many things as threats, the bills we have to pay, the boss that gets mad, the guy that cut me off in traffic, blah, 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 blah. These, and we interpret them as they are threatening my values or what I need, we go into limbic response. We create reactions that are trying to help us manage that situation more with coping, right? So we drink, we get angry, we yell, we fight, we give up, we have shopping addictions, we distract ourselves. These then perpetuate themselves. We do this more, and now we're more stressed because we lost money, or we're functioning poorly because of our addiction, or we're being mean to people, so our relationships aren't going well. And this feeds into now destiny, right? Your experience of life becomes negative, which turns back into that feed loop and continues that cycle. Stimulus, negative interpretation, negative reaction, negative experience of life. We get stuck in that cycle. We think we have no choice. That's where mindfulness comes in. You have a choice. And this is where Viktor Frankl's teachings are so bright and brilliant, right? So he survived the Holocaust and the death camps, came out to study what is it that helps people survive but also keep hope through really difficult situations. It is the knowing. So he says, between stimulus and response, there lies a space. And within that space is your freedom to choose a response. Right there, he gave you the answer of why mindfulness changes your whole life. Because it creates that space between the stimulus and the response or reaction. Right there in that space where you had that mind input into what you're going to interpret this as and how you are going to respond and what response will serve you best. That's where you examine the values, the thoughts, the beliefs. What mindfulness does, and in this practice, is give that space to you between the stimulus and the response. That's where you're learning how to calm down, to come back to center, to find moments of breath and pause. And the stronger your ability to do that, the more aware and present you are for everything that you're experiencing. And here is where that observation begins. So you get to observe what are the thoughts, beliefs, and values contributing to my interpretation of life, and then generating my reaction and my reality. You get to observe what's happening in my emotional world right now. So what are my emotions without judging them, just noticing? And what's happening in my physical world based on my interpretation of this experience? And who does that turn me into in this situation? Who am I being? And on top of all that, we get to go even deeper. And we get to say, what are my truest values? What is my heart's center and wisdom? Meaning, who do I really want to be in the world? And you get to understand how your interpretation of things is contributing into who you are being, your experience in emotional, physical world, who you are being, and then who it's turning you into. And is this aligned with who you really are and your true values? And then the biggest power, you get the power to choose. Wow. So as you're noticing all these things, you're saying, okay, now I get to really understand there are needs behind my reaction. There are unmet needs, right? So we're doing all this in compassion. There's a need here, and they're almost always, love, belonging, acceptance, safety, nourishment. And my fear of that need not being met is contributing to this behavior that's making me react in the way that I am, that's generating this reality that's not serving me very well. So if I see those needs, now I learn skills on how to nurture those needs and come back to center. And so in your mindfulness coaching, in this process of learning this, you will be developing the skills to pause, to create that space between stimulus and response. And we do this in exercises and presence and breathing and meditations. And then you develop deeper skills with different meditations, different awareness techniques that develop your ability to understand what's going on through your observations and identify needs. And then you're developing skills that nurture. So these are the self-care practices, the meditations, the way of relating to self and life that nurture you back to well-being and help you to live as that heart-centered self. Let you come back to that centered state and live your true values, which of course leads to being in the world with more peace, purpose, and happiness. That is why I love this practice, and that is why I want to help you develop your own form of mindfulness that can lead you on this journey to living your heart-centered self. Peace, purpose, happiness.